The term sheep has become somewhat controversial in our current social and political climate. It's often used disparagingly to describe those who seem to naively follow whatever their leaders tell them to do, even if they're being told to do what appears to be foolish, harmful, irrational, or even outright wrong. Some have pushed back against this criticism by arguing that as Christians, we have been called to be like sheep so that we should simply follow whatever these orders might be, though each one who argues this will probably have in mind some limit as to how far they will go. Now, I do not intend to address any specific cases in which this concept may arise, but I do believe that it would be helpful for us to consider some general principles about sheep. Well, first, does the Bible say anything that would address this controversy? Well, let's look at a few introductory thoughts today. The Bible does indeed use the term sheep in describing our relationship with Jesus. He is the shepherd and we are his sheep. In John 10 and verse 11, Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Then in John 10, verses 14 and 15, Jesus said again, I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. In John 10:27, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. Clearly, we are to be as sheep in our relationship with Christ by meekly following Him, the Good Shepherd, wherever He leads us. But does this mean that we are to act in the same way toward others? Well, notice what else Jesus said in this very same chapter in His illustration about His sheep. He says in verses 4 through 5, when He puts forth all His own, He goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow Him because they know His voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. Friends, if we are his sheep, we're not to follow anyone in the same manner in which we follow him. That means that we will not follow any religious leader who is teaching something contrary to his word. John said that if someone does not bring this teaching, that being the teaching of Christ, then we are not to receive him, Second John 10. It also means that we will not follow any civil ruler who is compelling us to something contrary to the will of God. When we're faced with this conflict, Peter said we must obey God rather than men, Acts 5:29. Jesus told his disciples, Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, Matthew 10:16. And his point was not that as sheep we are to follow along wherever the wolves direct us to go. Instead, he was again emphasizing our relationship with him. They were to follow him, meaning those Christians, us, are applicable to us today, are to follow him wherever he directs us to go, even if it was in the midst of wolves. Regarding our relationship with civil authorities, since this is often the context in which this term is used today, the Bible does teach that we are to submit to those who rule over us. However, Peter also wrote that we are to do this for the Lord's sake, First Peter 2:13. We do not submit to rulers for their sake, but for the Lord's sake. The will of Christ always trumps the will of our rulers. He is our shepherd, so we must follow him. But there's another animal analogy that would be helpful to consider in this context, and this is the one that Jesus gave immediately after he said that he was sending his disciples out as sheep in the midst of wolves. He said, Be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves, Matthew 10:16. Those in authority are often opposed to Christ and his people. In fact, when Paul described the enemies in our spiritual battle, he included the rulers and the powers. Therefore, to take the term sheep out of its biblical context and use it to justify every order from rulers without questioning them is at the very least inaccurate and could be, depending on the situation, reckless and even disobedient to the Lord, who is our true shepherd. As we face an increasingly dangerous and uncertain world, we are to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. As followers of Christ, though, we are to be His sheep alone. Friends, we thank you for joining us for our program today, and may God bless you with a wonderful day.